Hey everybody, we hope you are doing well today. Welcome to the LANFest Collegiate Esports panel. My name is Chris Allison. I'm one of the board members for LANFest and have been in the collegiate esports space for the last several years, doing a variety of things. And we're excited today just to kind of meet Sam, meet Christina, talk a little bit about each of our experiences and background. I think between the three of us, we probably cover just about every touch point of collegiate esports in some way, shape, or form. And really, like this panel is not super preloaded with things that we want to try and teach you or specific topics. We really want to interact with you in chat today. So we've got chat up. Please post questions if you have any. And let's just we're going to kind of jump into intros here. So, ladies first, Christina, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit of your background?
Yeah, of course. Hi, I'm Christina. I have been a summer intern at Intel for the past 2 summers, working primarily on gaming and esports and education projects. One of the things I've been working on in particular is called Intel Inspires. I'm sure we'll go into that more later. And I'm currently finishing up my last year in college at San Diego State University.
Thanks. How about you, Sam?
Yeah, my name is Sam Morris. I've been in collegiate esports for about 5 years now. I started working with Crimson Gaming, which was the University of Utah student club way back when. Then that got elevated to a varsity program. Became a part of TESPA for about 2 to 3 years, being a tournament admin and then a graphic designer for them. Helped with any of their Hearthstone initiatives about 2 3 years ago. Or more than that now. It's been quite a while. Beyond that, I've been focused on kind of helping to elevate the Pac-12 and Pac-12 esports and all the schools involved with there. Starting out with Pac-G and then elevating it to Pac-U, which is the most recent iteration of that Pac-12 esports. From there, I run my own production company called Space Productions, full service esports broadcast production company, which just recently helped out with the Intel Inspires. So
No, that's really cool. And if you guys would, those of you that are here in chat, please just chime in, tell us a little bit about yourself, and really like what questions you have about the collegiate esports landscape. Um, so, Sam, like let's kind of start with you. And back in the Crimson Gaming days, I mean, which seems like a really long time ago.
24 years ago now, yeah.
Yeah, so like you were, and I know that you were really vital in, um, both kind of the launching and operating of that club, as well as some of the very first athletic conference type involvement with collegiate esports through Pac-12 Network. And tell us some stories about those days.
Oh boy. So it was a group of three or four of us as a ragtag team. We came in, it was me, Angie Klingziak, Jordan Runyon, and then Lendl Ho at the time. And so it was a group of us four that was just kind of came in at a student club. I remember Angie literally just dragged me out of the Hearthstone club at the time and said, "Hey, you do graphics pretty well. You do graphics like a lot better than we do at Crimson Gaming. Would you like to come and bring your graphic expertise? We'll give you a seat on the board and it'll be fine and dandy." And I was just like, "Sure." Like that was me, 18-year-old me at the time, and I was like, "Yeah, let's do this." And then it quickly grew into throwing events of like 200 people, 300 people, 500 people. Rest in peace. This was all before COVID, but we held it in like the student union, and then we started to learn all the ins and outs of the university. And then from there, we started petitioning to various different programs, the various different departments to be like, "Hey, we want to be a varsity esport. We think this is a huge thing. We want to be recognized by the university for what we do." These players are playing on a competitive stage because even then, when League of Legends was around, we were still like, I think we were a top 30, 40 team. I mean, it wasn't incredible, but it was still like nationally recognized. It wasn't until we got our Overwatch program that we really got to the top echelon of teams at the University of Utah. Um, but it was a wild adventure of basically climbing and clawing our way and spending a lot of money and then praying the university would reimburse us, and throwing events for students all across campus.
Oh, that's really cool. What are some of your first experiences, Christina?
Oh my gosh. With esports, one of the experiences that really sticks out in my mind, I was actually still in high school and I got to attend, this wasn't like a college event by any means, but Intel Extreme Masters in San Jose. I got to meet all of the TSM League players who I was like a fangirl of, and I still am, as you can see.
Nice.
So that was super awesome. And then in college, one of the experiences that I still think of really fondly was, I think my freshman or sophomore year, UCSD's Triton Gaming held this world's viewing party at B-Dubs, Buffalo Wild Wings, and it was literally like 1 or 2 a.m. because that's when it airs, of course. And we're all sitting in this empty B-Dubs, just like a bunch of college kids cheering because they got the champions in this sort of like AR performance on the stream, which was like the first time we'd ever seen that, and everyone just went
Yeah.
crazy. And I was just thinking like, wow, we're really here in Buffalo Wild Wings at 2 a.m., like going crazy over these video game characters that we're all like super passionate about. And that was just super cool.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I'm compared to you guys, like I'm old, and so my experience in collegiate esports has been like really different because I was actually working in higher education as collegiate esports started to spring up, and back in what was it same 2014, I think, is when Robert Morris University created their program the first year and
Yep.
was the first school in the country to offer scholarships. And the university I was at, we launched our program in 2016, and I think we were the 10th school in the country to be launching at that time. And just watching, just watching how the ecosystem started to develop, and some of us crazy school admins that probably didn't have as much oversight as we deserved from our administration, that like to push the envelope, started creating these programs, and just trying to figure out how to provide things. But I think one of the most important parts in the evolution of collegiate esports has actually been the involvement of students and recently graduated students to kind of help shape what students want, because I think that's an area that as an industry, we really can do a better job of listening to current students as well and what current students are looking for. Um, so we had a question that just came through through chat from Binahara, and he or she asked, as a high school student, how does one go about getting involved in college esports? So what advice would you guys have for them on moving out of high school, coming into college freshman year? We live in a COVID world now where maybe freshmen are on campus, maybe they're not. How does somebody start getting plugged in?
Sam, I'll let you go
Um,
first.
Yeah, in a COVID world, it's a lot more difficult. I remember I still work with Utah Esports and help with their broadcast production, and it used to be, hey, just show up at this place, show up in our lab, and we'll show you the ropes on how to get involved and how to do this and how to do this role. But now, because of COVID, we have to basically even sit there and have an onboarding session with them, where we basically run them through like how to remote into everything, how to get into your workstation, how to get ready to produce and do a broadcast, where we could have just done it in face to face. So in a COVID environment, it's a whole different ball game. I don't know how much student leaders are kind of doing it and how they're getting involved, but I know I've seen a lot of heavy Discord involvement. So whatever colleges you're kind of scouting right now and whatever colleges you're looking to get into, look into their student organizations and then try and find something that's related to gaming. And then ideally you find a Discord that they have, and then just go to the very top. They'll almost always have their like leadership role at the very top, and just basically say, hey, I'm looking here, I would love to be a part of your club, do you guys have an application form? And either 90% of the time they don't have one, or they might have one, and they'll try and get you involved in some way, because they're always looking for people that are passionate and willing to volunteer.
Yeah, and then that event that we were just talking about, Intel Inspires, not sure what grade or what year of high school the user who asked the question is in, but Intel sponsored this event and helped put this thing helped put this event on called Intel Inspires, where we are basically connecting high school students who are passionate and love gaming with universities who are recruiting for their own esports clubs and professional esports teams or collegiate esports teams. So that's also one avenue if you're not already graduating this coming summer. Um, And other than that, like what Sam said, basically just looking at the universities that you're interested in and looking for like, do they recruit specifically for esports, or is that something that you kind of join after you're already admitted? Because certain universities will do things a little differently. So just understanding that and yeah.
Yeah, I really echo that. Look at your target schools and the ones that you're interested in from an educational perspective. Like making sure they have the degrees that you want, because especially kind of in today's environment, the more you can focus in on what you want to learn and what you want to prepare for your future, and the earlier you can identify that, the more helpful it will be. Um, with online learning and potentially remote involvement in collegiate esports now, that's something that you should be able to find on a school's Discord, or if you reach out to even just the admissions staff at a university, they should be able to connect you to the right people from that campus's staff that can give you the insight, or like help you find access to those communities on campus. And I think you really need to decide kind of what level of involvement you're looking for with collegiate esports, because there really is a gamut. I mean, you've got everything from just casual recreation where you want to play with friends, and you just might want to have a couple structured games every week and something that's more like intramurals, or you might want to be like super hyper competitive, dreams of going pro. You really want to try and find that team and show your skills. And if you're wanting to get involved in that type of competitive environment, because that's another question that was asked, what do you need to start learning in order to be prepared for collegiate esports? If you're wanting to play in a super competitive type environment, then any type of team environment or team experience you have translates directly into being a part of an esports team. These days, a lot of colleges have, physical health training programs that you have to go through, mental health resources, and things like mindfulness training, and ways to kind of reduce tilt, and communication skills are gigantic when it comes to competitive esports. Because if you can't figure out how to tell somebody what you need or what you're doing, or those types of things, if you can't communicate those, it's really hard to be a part of a team and really be effective. um, Sam and Christina, have you guys had any experiences with, or Sam, I think you for sure have experiences with kind of the higher level competitive play, because you were involved in the foundations of like Collegiate Rainbow Six, and
Mhm.
some of the game titles that weren't necessarily first movers, uh, but kind of came into the scene after. So, what are some of those competitive kind of takeaways that you've seen?
Yeah, so fun fact actually. Ever since Crimson Gaming, I have avoided the competitive side of esports at like the plague. I do not enjoy it. I find the people, and it's managing a lot of people, managing a lot of players is very, very difficult. I remember in Crimson Gaming when we had literally 10 teams, 10, 15 teams for like a huge amount of titles, anything from like, even we had a Tetris team at one point, all the way to like League of Legends and Overwatch for your standard stuff. But it's just, there's so much to manage there, and you hit the nail on the head. Like, communication is vital in every step of the way and every step of life too. And it's just like you're required to learn and grow, and be able to communicate well with everyone, especially like in a production manner. I was just talking with the production peeps about this recently, where we have to keep our messages brief and to the point and succinct as quickly as possible. So if there's a problem, you have to have it be very precise and have an action point ready to roll. Because in these comms, when we have sometimes 10 people in one channel, like even before COVID, you would have the observers like sitting in the front row and they could kind of talk between one another. But now that we're all in a Discord together, it's just chaos. So you have to keep your comms incredibly clean. And that applies even to like competitive, when you have 6 to 8 people in a lobby, in your Discord comms for like an Overwatch team. You might have your coach in there, you might have your manager in there, and just finding these ways to communicate well with one another and communicate in the manner of, even outside of the game, is very, very important. Where it's just like, you shouldn't immediately say, I hate my teammate for this. You should take it to your coach immediately and learning the right ways to communicate correctly, and take it up the chain and they take it back down, is a very good life skill when you're working on a team together, on a competitive team specifically. Because if they mess up one game, like they throw the dragon, you can't tilt. Like it happens. Like there's a lot of pressure that goes into that kind of stuff. If you mess up a smite, shit happens, and you can't hold them accountable for that.
Yeah, I remember the first team that we recruited was for League of Legends, and we had I think it was like 7 recruits the first year, and a few current students that joined the team as well. And I'll never forget one of the first days of practice um, where you know, it was all guys on our team. Um, and they'd come from all over the U.S. Like we had a guy from Alaska, we had a guy from New England. Uh, we were located in the Midwest, and so you know several from around that area. But they were sitting side by side as a team of 5 in league, and it was the first time they had ever sat as 5 people playing a game together on the same team. And our ADC was just kind of known for being way too aggressive and making bad plays. I mean, that was kind of like his MO.
Mhm.
And one of the first days they were playing in a game, and I mean the dude just entered, and like everyone stopped and like turned and looked over at him, and he just felt the glares of everyone on the team, and he's like, he made a comment about it afterwards, like I've never experienced
Yeah.
something like that in my entire life, where what's been this remote experience forever all of a sudden is real and tangible, and being around physical community is a very, you know, very different type thing.
Mhm.
So a question about, other than being a player or coach, you know, what other kind of jobs are there? Christina, I mean, you've been a marketing intern with Intel and getting to intersect with gaming in a really stinking cool way. Would you share a little bit about kind of that process of how you found Intel and maybe some other things that you saw along the way of opportunities that are out there? Oh, we can't hear you, Christina, or at least I can't hear you.
Sorry, I was muted.
There you
Um,
are.
thank you. But I was just saying that is such a great question. When I was in high school, staying up late at night playing League, I actually never even considered there being like a gaming career that was accessible, I guess. I just always assumed that, oh, you either like make games or you play them professionally, or like there's no other career paths. But that's not true at all. There's this really awesome site called Hitmarker that it's basically like LinkedIn for gaming positions at many different companies, from your professional esports organizations like TSM, 100 Thieves, to even like gaming project managers at Google or Amazon. Um, the way that I found my Intel gaming internship specifically was literally just going on Google and searching like gaming internships. Um, gaming like that, and that's how I found my position that I then applied to. And I think your passion for gaming is what sets you apart from other applicants, of course. I know that is what my manager told me. That's what separated me, I guess, from the pack. Um, and then apart from just marketing roles, there is literally an entire universe full of gaming related positions, from like account managing major gaming brands. Just speaking from like an Intel perspective, we have people managing like Razer, iBuyPower, other cyber power, those relationships, even with like Alienware, other brands like that. And then there's also people who work with developers, so not necessarily developing the games, but managing the relationships between the game developers and people who create the hardware for computers to make sure that the games are optimized and run smoothly. I've even seen like accounting positions open at like Blizzard and Riot. So really, um, no matter where your passions lie, there's always a way to tie in your hobby for gaming and make that a career if that's what you really want. Um, and then recently, I even saw a position at Corsair that was like managing collegiate relationships, and managing college on campus reps. So that's also something.
Yeah, Sam, what about from your perspective, like the production and broadcasting world, which is, um, Yeah, I mean, there's a lot out there in the collegiate space where people
Mhm.
have started trying to kind of establish collegiate broadcasts. And does this follow the same model as traditional sports, where there's revenue driven by viewership numbers and that kind of thing? But what are you seeing on the kind of support services side of the esport competition itself?
Ooh, so there was three things you touched on there. One, I'll start with jobs. The second one, I'll go into like the revenue stuff, and then we'll start diving into that whole mess of income. But it's interesting. Beyond that is for jobs. I've always taken the mantra: if you can't find something, or if you're not getting the position that you want, make it yourself. I did that with space productions, and it's a very privileged position to be able to do that. But it is something that I highly suggest people look into. The wild world of startups is absolutely crazy. There's a lot of VC money within esports. You don't even have to do VC half the time if you just want to do it and you're passionate about it. If you're already volunteering your time for your student club, transitioning to volunteering time for building your own company is a whole nother thing. It goes back to your whole thing of like your network is your net worth. You do have to build up a network over time to be able to do that, I think, pretty well. But it is possible. Finding a job it's very hard in esports. You are not going to get the first job you want. I think the numbers where it's like for every person that's searching for a job, there's like 100 people for each job, or like 1,000 people for each job. I think it was in esports. So all those jobs on Hitmarker, there's a lot of people vying for them. So don't be discouraged if you don't get it. Just come back, iterate, improve on your resume. If they get back to you and they say that sorry, your application was denied, go and email them, ask for feedback, say, hey, can we meet sometime next week? I'd love to have 5 minutes to talk through pros and cons of my resume, of my cover letter, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of resources. There's a lot of workshops out there that were not there 2 to 3 years ago. If you look at Evil Genius's program, if you look at Cloud9's program, if you look at Uconnect, all of these people are building out successful or student success programs where they basically will have like resume reviews, job fairs, stuff like that, and give you these chances to network. I highly suggest you guys look into at least Uconnect. They do a lot of promotion and they partnered with Cloud9 recently. Beyond that, Evil Geniuses, their Discord is very good. They have great memes between one another, although some of them got a little salty with who did the first collegiate Discord. But life goes on. Do you want to touch on
We had
revenue
we had
now?
one question. Yeah, let's jump into that. But first, there was just a question about VC, which is venture capital, so investment firms that are looking to invest in businesses. And there is a lot, or there has been a lot of VC money. I still think there is investment, and we're seeing some investments, but the collegiate esports space is beginning, dare I say, to mature a little bit, and you're starting to see some consolidation happening in the space, and some bigger partnerships and people trying to tie efforts together in order to become more influential. And as the space continues to mature, and you'll start to see the businesses that are really successful and start to get major traction. Um, then that's where there's going to be some jobs created specifically in the college market that might not exist today. So, uh, part of what a good college should be doing is preparing you for jobs that do not exist yet. And in today's world, especially in the college esports space, that's probably most of the jobs. If you think about what's going to be available 5 years from now, and you can look at things like the traditional sports world and the traditional, entertainment media markets, uh, and try and kind of predict, like, okay, these are going to be types of positions that are going to be needed a few years down the road. Uh, but like Christina was saying earlier, pursue your passion, figure out what those areas of passion are, and then figure out how to plug that passion into this ecosystem, because that is going to make you stand out, and going to really take you leaps and bounds above other people competing for the same positions. Um, so let's touch base on revenue a little bit, like the business that is college esports.
Yeah, college esports is kind of crazy when it comes to revenue because, oh my god, whoever just issued all
Wow,
those tier one subs,
bearded
congratulations, enjoy.
berserker. Thank you very much. That's awesome.
Nice. There you go. There's one revenue method.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways in collegiate. It depends if you're the student, if you're the program, if you're like a third party, and a lot of it. Specifically within collegiate esports, the return on investment isn't always just money. A lot of times, the return on investment, and I've heard Eugenia and Dom talk about this on all their panels a lot, is just creating people that are loyal to the brand. Because like that key age for like really getting people snared in on a brand, like Corsair, like for example, I have like a Corsair keyboard, but I also have a Razer mouse. And it's like, maybe if I went through the Corsair program, they would have had a chance to indoctrinate me more to be like, Razer mice are better than Corsair mice are better than Razer mice. So that 16 to like 24 range is where you really get those like life patterns of what brands you want to buy for pretty much the rest of your life, unless things change. And so that's the biggest return on investment for a lot of these collegiate programs. But if you're talking more, or these third party like brands that are getting involved with the scene, money isn't really ever seen in collegiate esports. The viewerships are still too low to really get into those traditional sports models when it comes to that kind of stuff. But the programs themselves, a lot of times, are just sustained by larger things. The best example I can think of is like publishers. A lot of times the publishers will come into the scene and it's just a marketing. Like esports at the end of the day is here to market a game for the publishers. So the esports program itself doesn't have to get a net gain. But if you're watching Hearthstone and all of a sudden you want to boot up Hearthstone and you realize you don't have the cards you want and you have to buy more packs, esports has done its job on the publisher level at least. In collegiate esports, the program level, it really boils down to student success in creating, very similar to what the athletic programs do, of kind of driving home not so much the professional pipeline, but driving home you are a student first and you are also a student athlete. So that student success model is important all the way through. I don't know if that hits so much on the actual like money revenue, but I was just kind of talking general return on investment. Did that help, Chris?
Yeah, no, it does. Christina, like, from a product company perspective, like Intel, what do you see some of the motivation and some of that return being for a company like Intel? And you've been involved specifically with Intel Inspires, and so tell us just a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, like Sam mentioned, college students are at such an integral point in their, I guess, lives and their purchasing lifetimes where it's a key moment for these like brand affinities to be developed, where they're about to start working, start having access to funds that they didn't have access to before. I know when I started working, I immediately upgraded my PC and built my own PC. And so those brand loyalties and brand recognition things really matter at that stage for college students. But at the same time, from I guess what I've been seeing in terms of like the revenue topic for schools, there's a couple different things specifically more related to like the monetary benefits as opposed to the other secondary benefits. I was speaking to a student who helped manage the program at University of Washington, and he was saying that their gaming lab or their little gaming area was funded completely through the Student Success Fund. So basically, it's this thing that's open every semester. I think most public schools have it, where student organizations can go apply with their proposal of like what they want to use the funds for, and then the committee will decide between which ones to approve and how much of the funds to allocate. And so they were able to build their gaming cafe completely from receiving that fund from their school. And then they charge a super low fee for students to go play there, as opposed to if they were to play at some other gaming cafe, which are starting to become more popular in the US. And so that area is completely funded through students paying that discounted rate, and they get a place to gather, a place to host like educational events even. They can host like seminars teaching about game design, other things like that. So that's like one revenue stream, even though I'm sure it only supports like the operation of their gaming area. Um, from an Intel perspective, our endeavors haven't been driven by revenue. For Intel Inspire specifically, we're looking to use that as a way to kind of connect the high school budding athletes with colleges looking to recruit esports players. And this is something that we already have in traditional sports where there's like an active recruiting system that's been established. Coaches go all across the nation to look for like the top talent for football, basketball, all those traditional sports. But this hasn't really been established yet for esports. And that's what we're hoping to achieve for the ecosystem. Basically, a way to kind of support these passionate high school students in order to kind of achieve their dreams as professional esports. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
No, it definitely. I think that definitely is insightful, and I don't think I missed any other questions
We got the big old
on
sub
chat.
wall that interrupted us.
Yeah, I know. I know. I'm trying to like dig through and make sure that we didn't miss anything other than some of the hype messages. I did see that in that list is Utah University of Utah Esports.
Oh, that might be me. I'm logged into that account right now. I just realized.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I always really respected what you guys were doing at University of Utah, and I mean, last time I talked with AJ there, they were like 13 different gaming clubs or 13 different game titles that had official clubs, and all networked underneath the um, student government type structure, like you were describing, Christina, where you can kind of request funds and that type of thing. And working in higher ed and figuring out, because I was at a school that really did not allocate many funds to cool projects, from my opinion as a gamer, right? Like it was things that were very traditional type projects, and so when we started trying to find money for video games, it was met with some resistance. So which I'm sure most people would just kind of assume in higher ed, the first steps of collegiate esports are met with with some resistance. So if you start looking at
The first step.
looking at
Every step is met with
yeah,
resistance.
well, yeah, no joke. I'm
Yeah.
sitting here thinking like I need to be careful about what I say, but I actually have no loyalties or legal obligations to anyone that I've worked for in the past, so I probably should be more open. Um, but you have to start thinking, and it works this way in business too, especially in trying to promote collegiate esports and form partnerships. You have to really understand what the other party gets out of it and why they're trying to drive these things forward. And we call them their buckets. Like they're trying to fill their buckets with stuff, and you have to figure out what that stuff is that they're trying to put in the bucket. And once you know what that stuff is, then you can figure out how to ask for what you need so that you can help provide that for them, and trying to find those common threads. And in higher education, it's no different. It's looking at how can we help attract new students for an admissions program. Okay, well, this gives us a great way to market and a great way to tell a story about something you can do while you're on our campus. Or how do we get alumni to donate money to new projects for the school? Well, there's a lot of people that played video games. Like a study that came out last year showed 85% of college students play some type of video game, which does include mobile. And so it's hard to kind of, I don't remember where the breakdown was between like mobile and PC and consoles and that type of thing, but games are just a part of our life these days. So how can we help connect and uh, build those relationships? And some
I
schools,
think you hit a
like,
really interesting point
go for
there
it.
too. Where the alumni, you like 85%, what was it, 85% of people under 24 or something like that, I'm assuming it was like that metric.
It was a specific study for college, so 18
Okay.
to 21, we'll say.
Okay, 18
Um,
to 21. So 18 to 21,
yeah.
most people in that age range, 85%, so huge majority, play video games. But the problem here in esports, and this is a huge problem in collegiate esports right now, is those students aren't the people that are paying the alumni dues right now. Those students are the ones that are going to be paying it 10, 15 years in the future, probably 20 years in the future because of this COVID pandemic now, where it's just everything is staggered significantly within collegiate esports right now, where even the old alumni donor base doesn't really want to donate to esports right now because, oh, it's video games, that's frivolous, I'd rather put my money towards football.
Yeah.
So we have this huge generational gap where we just have to wait. And there's nothing we can do except wait for it and keep pushing initiatives for right now, knowing that we will be at a net loss and we won't see a return on investment within these collegiate programs for the next 20 years, potentially, on the alumni donor base at least. And it's a huge problem because that extends all the way down to viewership as well, where it's like, cool, the best, like the biggest, I think the biggest viewership base that ever happened was on the College Rocket League Grand Finals. But that was because, one, it was hosted on the Rocket League channel, and two, Rocket League fans just love watching Rocket League no matter what kind of Rocket League it is.
This is actually the National Championship Rocket League shirt from this last year.
From Texas,
from Texas, where I am. Yeah, Esports Stadium, Arlington. Yeah. Yep.
That was sick. Like, I want to see more of those engagements, but until we get those fan bases out there and those brand loyalties out there, we can't effectively activate on it. And it just takes time, and we just have to wait. And it's been that long waiting game of, like, even when the difference between Pac-G, where we started as a bunch of students, 4 students driving the Pac-12 schools to try and pull them into esports, the conclusion of that is we realized the infrastructure is not there. We cannot activate to take to the next level of what we want because there's only one varsity program in the Pac-12 at the time. Now there's 8 varsity programs within the Pac-12, and we're able to activate a lot better, but there's still that stopgap of the student clubs don't have signing powers for the universities. So beyond that, it's just getting the fan base, getting the activations, and getting all these people involved. There's just a huge amount of time that you just have to wait.
I think we can actually reduce that time, though, if we're smart about it. Because and it needs to be reduced because, I mean, so I'm 38, right? The average age of the average gamer, I want to say, is like 34, 33. It's way higher than what I think most people that are older would assume. I've been playing video games with my best friends since college. In college, we had Halo 1. So that's how old I am. Halo 1, original Xbox. We would take a 100-foot Ethernet cable, run it out of a window in our dorm. We'd swing it to another room where they'd catch it and pull it in and plug it into their Xbox. And I mean, this is before like school networks could even handle anything. And we would play matches. And I still remember like getting a quadra kill, dropping my controller, running down the staircase into my buddies' rooms, yelling some things that I can't say on stream at them, and then running back up to my room before they had respawned. And like these are memories that a lot of people in their mid-30s have about college and video games. And I think that there have to be ways that we can engage that audience because they do have jobs and have had jobs for 10 to 15 years. They can give to the university, even if it's not just some sort of like massive check every year. I mean, you can ask them for $100, $200 that can go into sustaining a program and operations. But I think that we need to do a better job at creating content for that audience to help bridge the gap. Because if you ran like a Halo 1 prisoner with rocket launchers only tournament, which you guys probably don't even know what that is, and that's okay. It's like prisoner was like one of the maps, and then you could do these custom settings where it's like nothing but rocket launchers. And I mean, we spent, I don't know how many hundreds of hours doing that, but that type of event is going to get some involvement from the older audience. And I would love to see Collegiate Esports start to pull more of that authentic audience, gaming audience that are alumni into, what's currently going on in the space.
Yeah, but I think a really good example is like Intel Inspires. Like what you guys are doing, Christina, is like incredibly good, where like the Fortnite activations, for example, get a huge amount of viewership because it's one, these kids live on Twitch, they're high schoolers, they used to play it on their phone, rest in peace Apple, or they still play it on their phone with Android, and they still play Fortnite, and the membership or the viewership numbers for those are insane compared to any other esports that they do. Like I bet you I could go to the Intel Inspires right now for Rocket League and the Fortnite numbers would still outshine them, and their engagement is absurd. But so the hard argument becomes of, do I cater to this older demographic that doesn't really know how to use the platform and doesn't really know how to get actively involved, and I have to spend all this time on education, or I can just push forward in the future and cater to this Zoomer generation, essentially, where they know exactly what to do and they know exactly how to engage and they're passionate about it and they're in my Twitter DMs like none other.
Yeah, and if you have the capital to be able to bridge that gap, then yeah, I mean, prepare for the future. Absolutely. Um, that's what the world's going to be in not that many years. Is these, the people that are engaging right now as they get jobs and have money, um, they can start supporting school programs and other types of efforts in ways that currently don't exist.
Yeah, I mean, you could also argue too, like the hard part is like with the collegiate revenue cycle, with actually how it works with like in terms of like the Pac-12 and like a lot of the Power 5 universities, is the majority of the money does not come from the alumni donor base. The majority of the money comes from these broadcast deals, comes from these deals with the Pac-12 that then they cut with Fox, and all those numbers are based on viewership. And until we have that viewership, the broadcast side of this is a relatively moot point when it comes to driving up revenue.
Yeah. So what kind of work goes into the broadcast? And Christina, have you seen much from your internship? And I guess you're on the marketing side, but have you seen much as far as how intel and publicity and broadcasting and these types of things, like how does that intersect with the collegiate esports world?
I honestly, in my role, haven't really worked too much with the broadcasting. Sam has been working on for Intel Inspires, so I think he would have much better insight on that front.
Well, I'll
Yeah.
kind of tweak the question. Well, let me tweak the question a little bit because Sam, you and I love to talk, so I want to make sure that we we don't overrule the time. But so from the marketing perspective, with Intel and kind of what you guys are doing with Inspires, like what are some key things that you've learned or like some knowledge that you've taken away that you feel like would be helpful to share with the rest of us?
Ooh, well, one thing that I learned, I was actually just thinking about this in our conversation about like alumni donations, was basically just the different sources of funding available for schools. And I'm not sure it'll vary by state, but there's actually a lot of grants available for like STEM related endeavors for both high schools and colleges that these gaming labs and gaming organizations can actually tap into. I know a lot of gaming setups at educational institutions, they serve a dual purpose. So it's not only for the team to game on, but during school hours, they'll host like content creation lessons, game design lessons. I know UCI has a partnership with their local K through 12 schools where they teach like game design, broadcasting curriculum that's kind of more catered towards like it kind of fits into what high schoolers learn in their normal curriculum anyways. And for Intel's other sponsorship with High School Esports League, they also offer a curriculum that is STEM.org accredited. So that basically allows high schools to apply for different grants and funding that are provided by like the government or other like public entities. So that's another avenue that isn't as well known for these gaming areas to get funded, basically. So that's one thing that I learned. And then Intel Inspires also kind of the prize pool is in the form of this $250,000 scholarship pool that the winners and different there's like different types of scholarships. So if you win, you could be eligible for one, or like there are other ones that are more application based. And I actually learned a lot about the structuring of scholarships, helping put together basically this enormous prize pool that could really help the students and some smaller colleges who really want to kick off their esports team but may not have the funding to offer some crazy type of scholarship for the top talent.
Oh, that's fantastic. Sam, what were you thinking earlier before I derailed you?
Oh, nothing. I was gonna hit on the broadcast stuff. I mean, for the Intel Inspire stuff, you guys have done a great job, or you guys, Intel AVGL, we're just a third party contractor for this, for doing the broadcast side of it, and we're super excited to be involved. But you guys keep giving us a lot of the Fortnite interviews, so you guys do a really good job of like featuring each one of the players. We make sure to bring the players on to showcase themselves as best as possible through stuff like interviews. We feature them more on games. So like with the Fortnite specifically, we'll follow like one specific squad as best as possible. And sometimes they may not perform well. Like we've had it where like one person will die within the first 5 minutes, and we're like, well, there goes that squad. Like, I guess we'll interview you afterwards and talk about like how you could perform better. But it's like, at least it's a step in the right direction of making sure that we're able to showcase these students, get their skill out there, but also get their personalities out there. Because as esports starts to grow, being an influencer is just as useful as being a really good player. And if you're both, holy cow, you are the golden grail of a professional player. And that's especially important in teaching these high school students how to compose themselves and act professionally, so they don't accidentally, what's the word I'm looking for, embarrass their programs as they go into college.
Yeah. So as we get close to the end here of wrapping up our time, I wanted to kind of ask you both a theoretical question. So, what's your prediction right now about one of the biggest changes that we'll see in collegiate esports over the next 5 years?
You got one, Christina? I'm kind of stumped.
In the next 5 years, see,
Yeah,
maybe
like
if you asked me before this year, would have had a really clear answer, but I feel like global events have thrown a wrench in things. But I think this is just a general trend with technology and what COVID has kind of forced the educational system to adapt to. I feel like online events are kind of becoming more acceptable. Like instead of traveling to another esports stadium to play a team, I feel like it will become more acceptable for these games to be like just streamed or played virtually. Um, Another trend I think is like higher engagement for clubs, not even just from like a pro play standpoint, but just like casual clubs on campus have seen higher engagement with COVID because gaming is like one of the only things you can do with your friends now, without like exposing yourself. So I think those are two things that we might see to continue in the future. What about you, Sam?
I'm going to say this is kind of controversial, but it's something that I've really noticed when it comes to like reading the actual metrics and numbers and especially how COVID has affected it. But the popping of the esports bubble and how it is going to affect collegiate. It's going to be a huge thing and it's going to be terrifying to watch because when it comes to collegiate is one of the few that is actually very, very stable and doesn't require a lot of these factors that would be affected if the bubble were to pop. Because these multi-million-dollar salaries for these pro players, that can't persist. Like their deliverables are starting to fail, especially when like DMCAs are starting to pop up all over Twitch. Like what happens if Twitch falls? What happens if a lot of these key streaming demographics and we all have to go to YouTube? And what happens if YouTube falls? And it's like all of a sudden we've lost the key 2 or 3 points that are revenue generation for a lot of these teams. And it's going to be interesting to see how a lot of these platforms evolve and how these venture capitalists come in and say, I want my money back, or, okay, I knew it was a sunk clause and now I'm just not going to invest in esports for the next 10 years. And it's going to be really terrifying to watch as like the Overwatch League, it's starting to hit that period where they're starting not to see the return on investment, especially with the lack of live events. And how is that going to affect collegiate and how is that going to affect esports as a whole? It's a whole thing that's going to pop in the next 5 years. And I'm scared of that.
Yeah, it is a scary thought about what could be happening, and I think for me, in seeing how COVID has changed the world. I mean, we kind of talk about like what will a post-COVID world be like, and I think we at least all agree it's going to be different in some ways. I mean, the fact that a majority of freshmen this year, like this is the first class of freshmen that are not having the same experience in going to college from high school as everyone else that's ever left high school and gone to college on a physical campus. Um, if you think about, and we've seen it some with my company Geeks and Recreation, where historically freshman population is like the largest recreational population on a campus. A lot of universities that have remote learning or do not have on-campus housing for freshmen are seeing extremely low adoption rates for casual competition. And if you think about it, when when we left home and went to college, for those of us that were not commuters that went and lived on campus, there became this geographical separation with our friends from high school. And we kind of have that dynamic where when we go
Thank
back
God.
and see those friends, well, seriously, like I am so glad that I had that separation. And when we go back and visit home, it's, you have that feeling of like, well, nothing ever really changed. You kind of ignore the fact that we've been away for a year, and then, the same old drama happens, and, you kind of live that old social life. But for a lot of students these days, there is not that break. They still have their high school friends geographically close to them, and they're still getting casual social time with them, even though they're now in college and remote learning. So I think that with the collegiate space, we're going to see it become more difficult to build like great teams if there's remote play involved, because you don't have that physical proximity. It's hard to live with the other players. That's the advantage of a lot of the pro teams. They have the houses where the entire team lives together. Um, and so I think that it'll become more challenging to see higher level of play in collegiate if there's not that physical proximity and able to kind of work together in a team environment, because those are skills that I think are difficult to learn remotely and online. Um, so I guess I don't know what kind of prediction that is, that we're going to see the skill cap in collegiate potentially drop because of COVID, because it's going to be harder for teams to achieve those higher levels of play without being physically in a room together. And if campuses aren't willing to put a room together for their students because of COVID, then that's going to impact play as well. Well, thank you guys so much. Go ahead, Sam.
Oh, I was gonna say the other side of it too is like this whole generation is used to that. Like I remember when quarantine hit, I was just like, "Oh, cool! I'm not changing my life much. Like this is fine and dandy." Like I was already in my room most of the time, and I would like go out for events, and then I would crash on my couch. And it's like as long as I have 2 rooms in my house, I at least have some kind of separation of my bedroom and my office, and I'm good. But it does create an interesting circumstance where it's just like these players are adapting to circumstances that we have never seen before. And it's like, sure, I could always go hang out with my friends before, but my introverted butt didn't like to do that. But now they have no option. They have to stay at home. And that's incredibly stressful on these kids. And it's just like all your VOD reviews, instead of having that camaraderie of being like, okay, cool, let's all gather around this computer and let's point at him and like point out what he's doing wrong or point out what they're doing right. And that's not a thing anymore. You're just all in your separate VOD rooms, and it's like maybe like you don't get that mass huddle of like 1, 2, 3, go Utes. You don't feel that anymore. Like sure, you have that on Discord, but it's like if I'm on Discord, I'm just gonna mute and deafen for that because everyone's mics gains is too loud and that just hurt my ears. And that's it's a very different environment. But I hope that it won't see an overall degradation in skill, especially within collegiate, because right now it's pretty much there's Maryville up here and then all the other schools way down here. So I hope there's not more of that skill loss, and I hope that we're able to continue to see a pipeline being built through stuff like Intel Inspires, stuff like even what League of Legends just released yesterday with their amateur scene. I hope these pipelines are still able to be built, and I hope that people are getting used to remote and that we can build a better future for esports as a whole.
Totally agree. Christina, any last words of wisdom for us before we go?
No, I think Sam covered it.
Yeah, good job, Sam. as always, it's a ton of fun just getting to hang out with you guys. And if those of you that are watching, please go and check out the LANFest website. Find out if there's local chapters near you. Get involved, especially if you're interested in collegiate esports or a college student. We really want to see more colleges get involved with what LANFest is doing and how we're supporting gaming communities, and also how we're helping support charities by raising funds with this gaming audience. LANFest is a pretty cool place. So please connect to us. Thank you guys so much for watching, and the stream will be back here after a few more minutes. And I think we've got some information for you here.